Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is a groundbreaking series that dives into the lives of people living in the last frontier. Each episode introduces you to colorful characters from around the state. Funding for Indie Alaska is provided in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company. Catch the latest episodes at alaskapublic.org.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge, a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services focusing on the Port of Anchorage and the major commercial participants in the Cook Inlet region, providing customers with marine services specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. Once again, it's time for Alaska Weather on this 23rd of April. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information for your community and village by heading to weather.gov/Alaska or calling the Weather Info line at 800-472-0391. Of course, you can find us on Facebook. You know that by now. On Twitter, AKwx is the hashtag to join in the weather conversation for all areas of Alaska. And on YouTube in the afternoon, you'll get your daily afternoon map briefing. Following this show on our partner here at Alaska Public, go to alaskapublicmedia.org and you'll be able to find this broadcast a little bit later on in the evening on the right side of their homepage or on YouTube simply by searching for the term AKwx TV. Let's get right to it. It is showing signs of spring around the region. St. Paul actually stayed above freezing all day long today with temperatures still in the 30s. It was above freezing, though, for the entire day, so we know some spring-like things are happening. Skagway hit 60 degrees, so it's got to be time to start talking about the breakup map. And we have some areas around Northway that are showing at least some open water there, and also in parts of the upper Kuskokwim Valley there. So we're watching for at least some changes starting. This is available anytime, so if you are a river village and you want to track some of the breakup changes that we're seeing as we go through April and into May, surely there are going to be some, and we're hearing more and more reports of some places even on the Susitna and around Fairbanks that are seeing the ice simply melting in place. If you'd like to track that and certainly to tell us more about your situation that you see on the river, head to APRFC, that's Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center, aprfc.arh.noaa.gov, and you'll find instructions there for how to submit your breakup report there in your community and village. So we'd love to hear about that. Now, this is a situation as we see it right now, and again, no warnings anywhere in Alaska at this time. And with the dry conditions that we've seen to have experienced for many parts of Alaska in the last several months, one of the tough places right now is going to be around the Matanuska Valley. A fire weather watch is in effect there tonight, and we're watching for the winds to come up as we go into the next day or so, especially around the Knik Valley and near the delta area of that region, the Knik Valley and the Knik River itself. We're watching for the winds to produce some lower humidity, and so the fire weather concerns are growing there. They're not extreme yet, but we're going to watch the Matanuska Valley, specifically around the Knik River, for signs of danger there as things are fairly dry at this point. Now, looking out to the west, you can see a very large circulation moving across the southern Bering Sea. This zone of low pressure is working eastward, and it does have a front that moved ashore into southwestern Alaska earlier today. Not a whole lot of impact with that. In fact, a lot of the air is kind of mixing in with itself, so the frontal characteristics with that really kind of falling apart. Really not a whole lot more to talk about. But waves of low pressure are rotating around this, and every time one of those swings through, some snow showers or rain showers will pass through your community. Some of that worked into southwestern Alaska earlier today, and the temperatures cooled off just a little bit more. As we look at southeastern Alaska, you can see waves of sunshine working through there, a little bit of cloud cover coming over the higher terrain, but Certainly a drier day for you. And once again, Skagway hit 60 degrees today. Just a beautiful day in southern parts of southeast and in northern parts of southeast around Haines and all the way west to Sitka and northward toward Yakutat. You can see signs of change across south central Alaska. The cloud cover is moving eastward slowly and surely, running into a ridge of high pressure that's not very large, but it's enough to hold back the clouds and keep conditions fairly nice from Fairbanks out toward Dawson to Northway and down to Yakutat. Clouds are moving back into southern sections of Kodiak Island. With that, don't be surprised to start to see some rainfall in the next couple days. Up across the north, we saw snow around the Kotzebue Sound region, and clouds were streaking from south to north across the north slope, and that's where most of the wind was today. We saw some gustier winds around 30 to 45 miles per hour for some of the north slope communities, and snow was falling around the western tip of the Seward Peninsula. Here's the front I was talking about. When we break it up like this, that means it's falling apart or it's coming together. In this case, you'll see the trend as it dissipates and across most of western Alaska. Low pressure sitting at 984 millibars with wind coming in from the west and southwest across the Alaska Peninsula. We're seeing some light rainfall there today. There's the high pressure center we're talking about across the northern Gulf. And across southern parts of southeast, another front's working itself northward. Most of what we're seeing, though, is fair weather across southeast. Just a beautiful day there. And clouds across the north slope, along with those gustier winds, probably kept things fairly cool. You'll notice snow showers around Kotzebue Sound. A little bit of light rain was reported across Tin City. Temperatures later tonight will be back in that cold regime, so expect any of that to be snowfall. High pressure still holding on around Prince William Sound at 1,012 millibars. Periods of rain and snow showers will mix across southwestern Alaska. And we're back to looking at rainfall across Kodiak Island. The central and western chain will be a little bit closer to the rain and snow mix, and dry weather should prevail for southeastern Alaska. Heading into Friday, low pressure sitting outside of Bristol Bay. That's down to 996 millibars with scattered areas of light rainfall across the north and western Gulf. Prince William Sound right now looks to be fairly dry, but as we get into Friday, a better chance for rainfall will develop across the western parts of Prince William Sound and the eastern side of the Kenai Peninsula. Watch for some of that to work across the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Around St. Lawrence Island, you might be looking at some light rainfall there. But just to the north, don't be surprised to see that switch back over to rain and mixed with snow at times. A better chance of all snow as you get into Kotzebue Sound and north of the Bering Strait. Most of the Aleutians will see an unsettled day. A better chance for some light chop and maybe some turbulence issues across the central and eastern chain, though, if you've got any flying to do between the islands. And for the milk run, looks like things should be fairly nice with clear sky and VFR and very little chance for any widespread turbulence or icing potential right now across most of southeast with fairly dry weather in place there. And you'll see the sunshine breaking through for a large part of the Susitna Valley, across the middle and eastern Tanana Valley, and we're still going to be watching for some gusty winds across the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast. Here's a look at Saturday now as we start up the weekend. The system that was at across the southern Bering Sea will cross over the Alaska Peninsula and make its way into the central Gulf. Low pressure will be as low as 985 millibars, so a little bit more wind there south of Kodiak Island and south of the Alaska Peninsula. And if you're watching the pressure pattern here, you'll notice, again, seeing a little bit of a change here across the Alaska Peninsula. That constriction in the flow and the lines closing in on each other tell us the winds are probably going to be a little bit stronger there as we get into Saturday. For southeast, you can see moisture is gathering a little bit more. There's a chance for some light showers across the central and southern parts of southeast and mainly around Haines and northward up to Chilkoot and White Pass regions. Across the middle and eastern Tanana Valley and into the upper Yukon Valley, we'll be watching for some areas of rain and snow showers. And rain will mainly stay just outside of Prince William Sound and across the eastern Kenai Peninsula, but also starting to work across the Barrens and up the Cook Inlet around Kodiak Island. And then for southwest, rain and snow showers will be a little more likely. Meanwhile, the Chukchi Seacoast and areas around Kotzebue Sound should start to see some drier weather. You see a little more sunshine there with snow showers across the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range. Most of that should be fairly isolated. And southwest, again, rain and snow showers are expected across the YK Delta with a better chance for snow across the central and eastern chain. Let's kind of look at how your weather is going to progress as we head into the weekend. Now let's go back to what happened today. Like I said, places around Skagway today easily reached up to 60 degrees. These were some of the temperatures we saw around 3 o'clock. Most areas in southeast were in the lower to mid-50s. A beautiful day there down around Haida Gwaii, the Queen Charlotte's, upper 40s, 56 for Skagway. Prince William Sound easily upper 40s to about 50 degrees. It's exactly what we saw in Homer today. Lower 40s for Kodiak Island. Anchorage was just shy of 50 degrees by 3 o'clock. Around Talkeetna, 48, 44 up around Glen Ellen and Golcana, 50 in Northway, 49 for Eagle, 51 in Fairbanks. Fort Yukon saw 48 degrees by late afternoon. 32 in Arctic Village. It was 37 for AKwx Pass. 20s and 30s for the Arctic coast. Most areas there stay below freezing again with the wind today. 20s and 30s for most of Kotzebue Sound. It was 32 in Nome, 41 in Unalakleet, a nice day there, 47 in Galena, 43 there in Sparivon with temperatures around 36 in Grayling this afternoon, 33 in Amonik, 42 around Bethel, lower to mid 40s for Bristol Bay, again low 40s for Kodiak Island, and low to mid 40s for a good chunk of the Alaska Peninsula. Sand Point's off 43. Cold Bay and False Pass also in the lower 40s. The Pribilofs, we're looking at temps in the mid to upper 30s with temps holding at or just below 40 degrees for Adak, Atka, and Attu at 36. Here's a look at where we stand for tonight then. Most areas across the interior will see temperatures go just below freezing. In fact, mid to upper 20s for most areas there. But once you get into the southwest, including the Kuskokwim and the Bethel valleys there, you're looking at most areas hovering at or above freezing with many around the mid 30s. 33 in Nome, Kotzebue Sound temperatures will be in the 20s, 19 in Barrow. Southeast we expect temperatures in the lower to mid 30s, 37 in Kodiak, the Chain, and the Alaska Peninsula in the mid to upper 30s, with South Central generally just a hair below 30 degrees with a relatively calm and clear sky. For South Central, high temperatures tomorrow will be in the upper 40s to lower 50s. Some of the warmest weather we expect to reach into Fairbanks and the Kuskokwim Valley, lower to mid 50s there. North of the Yukon, temperatures will stay in the 40s, but still pleasantly mild. The south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range, including Fort Yukon and Arctic Village, generally in the mid to upper 30s. The North Slope in the teens and 20s. You'll still be below freezing for most of the day, 27 in Barrow. Lower to mid 50s for southeastern Alaska. Another beautiful day for you. Places like Skagway again will be pleasantly mild. Ketchikan and Annette, though, might be some of the warmer spots. Kodiak Island, 46, mid 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. St. Paul and St. George in the upper 30s. And the Aleutians generally in the upper 30s to about 40 degrees for tomorrow afternoon. On to flying weather now. We will see some patches of IFR conditions across the Barren Islands around the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula and the south and eastern coast of Kodiak Island. For areas around the Kuskokwim Delta, look for IFR conditions to be spotty. And outside of Norton Sound and the southern coast of the Seward Peninsula, including Nome, you may see IFR. Otherwise, MVFR for a wide area in the Bering Sea, north of the Bering Strait up to the Chukchi Seacoast, and north of Chilkoot and White Pass. Most of southeast should be just fine. And most of the Alaska Peninsula and the central and eastern chain also looking at MVFR. Here's your pass conditions. AKwx and Adigan Pass look to be all clear tomorrow. VFR conditions should prevail throughout your Friday. MVFR may start Lake Clark, but we may see improvements as we head through the afternoon. Merrill Pass, we expect to see VFR. Rainy Pass should be VFR throughout the day, and Windy Pass should be visual flight rule for your Friday. Isabel Pass, we expect to be VFR. And for Mentasta Pass, expecting VFR conditions to prevail there. Tanita Pass also expecting to see VFR conditions. Portage Pass, especially eastern Prince William Sound, should be fairly dry throughout most of the day. To the south of that, conditions will be changing there. And Chilkoot and White Pass we expect to see mostly VFR. Maybe as you head a little bit further north into the Yukon, conditions will change a little bit further on the other side of the pass. Freezing levels now, we see that warm air is starting to show up a little bit more often on this map, and you can see that's moving its way up across southeastern Alaska, levels as high as 2,000 to 4,000 feet. And then warmer air is trying to work its way up across the Kuskokwim and the Yukon Delta into the eastern parts of Norton Sound. Those levels still hovering around 2,000 feet, but again, signs of spring showing that warm air aloft lifting northward. And then you have the warm air bubble sitting up across the North Slope, that too around 2,000 feet. The surface freezing line, though, pretty much in its same old seasonal spot there. It is sneaking northward a little bit across the west coast. But most areas there see that surface freezing line hovering close to southeast and very close to the ice edge across the Bering Strait. Icing potential anywhere above 4,000 feet, with most of these areas are showing light to isolated moderate for parts of South Central and Kodiak Island out across the Gulf. For the central and eastern chain, as far east as Dutch Harbor and Unalaska, and as far west as Kiska almost, and St. Matthew and northern parts of Nunivak Island, the areas north of Amonik into the Norton Sound region and the eastern coast of St. Lawrence Island. We expect to see at least a chance for some light rime potential. The jet stream shows a little bit more activity to our west there. We've got a ridge working its way across the western Bering Sea, so any activity here across eastern Asia will have an opportunity to affect the western Bering Sea as long as things stay on track. But we still have a fairly predominant southerly flow across the central and northern parts of Alaska, and this is allowing that warm air from the south to work its way well into the interior. Meanwhile, faster wind speeds across the central Gulf, around 140 knots, are steering a lot of the active weather quickly to the south of Alaska, so no major threats of any major cold blast at this point. At 9,000 feet, our broad circulation, as we saw in the satellite picture, shows broad southerly flow coming across the Gulf from 10 to as high as 50 knots. Some of the stronger winds there across Kodiak Island to the Alaska Peninsula, and then westward, that northwesterly flow coming in for the central and western Aleutians from 30 to 55 knots. For southeast, we're looking at winds coming down mainly from the north and northeast, 15 to 20 knots or so, and then you start to get back into that southerly flow as you get just east of Yakutat and Icy Bay. At 3,000 feet, low pressure sitting south and west of Cape Newenham. East of the Pribilof Islands, you get that west and southwesterly flow moving over Kodiak Island from about 10 to 20 knots or so. Wind speeds across the interior remain light, 10 to 20 knots, with more of an easterly flow coming across the Brooks Range at 15 knots or so. You have an opposing flow on the western side of the Bering Strait coming across eastern Siberia at 20 to as high as 60 knots. A ridge of high pressure working in some cooler weather across the central chain. And southwesterlies are moving over the Gulf, wrapping into low pressure, sitting just east of Haida Gwaii and right over British Columbia. Once again, wind speeds across southeast remain fairly light. As far as turbulence, there's no major threats there. You may see some light chop below 4,000 feet, and again, we're going to be watching for some gales across the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, as well as some blowing snow. So we'll watch for some visibility concerns to develop, but not seeing any major threat just yet. But areas below 4,000 feet there could see some light to isolated moderate turbulence throughout the day. For southwest, look for below 4,000 foot threats there across the western coast of the YK Delta, across Kodiak Island, and probably Port Hayden and Pilot Point, watching for some chop throughout the day. And for the central and western chain below 4,000 feet, also some potential there. Most of south central, the interior, the Seward Peninsula, as well as Kotzebue Sound and southeast are in the clear as far as any widespread turbulence or even icing potential threats tomorrow. That's a look at your aviation forecast. In just a few minutes, I'll be back with an update on the sea ice edge as well as your marine weather. Stay tuned.
A lion at night with plenty of planetary light. Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky tonight. Hey Dean, you've seen a picture of the Great Sphinx of Egypt, right?
Oh yeah, he's posed like this.
No, that's more of a downward dog.
How about this?
Wow, that's an amazing likeness.
All right, let's just show the picture. Yes, that is the mysterious Sphinx, and I know it well because it looks an awful lot like the constellation Leo the Lion.
Exactly. April is a great month to see the lion riding high across the spring sky.
And joining him will be the two brightest planets slowly and steadily approaching each other.
Let's show you. Okay, we have our sky set up for any clear April night after sunset facing south. Look up high in the sky and you'll see the stars that form a very ancient star pattern we call Leo. I always recognize him by the backwards question mark of stars that form the lion's head and a triangle that marks his rear end.
He's often shown as a reclining sphinx with his two paws out in front of him. He looks just like the big monument in Egypt. Let's fly in for a closer view. Leo's brightest star is called Regulus. Regulus means little king, and it marks the heart of this king of the beasts. So it was also called the heart of the lion, the royal one, and the king's star.
When modern astronomers look at this regal star, they see a blue-white light over 77 light years away that is over 3 times the diameter of our sun and about 3.5 times more massive.
It's really a 4-star system, and the main star spins super fast. In fact, if it spun only 10% faster, it would rip apart and fly into space.
Algeba is the second brightest star in Leo, and although its name means the forehead, it's really in Leo's mane. Algeba is a double star that you can separate with a good telescope. On the night of April 26th, you'll find a waxing gibbous moon near Leo, but even closer to a really bright looking star. That is actually the largest planet in our solar system, giant Jupiter.
About once a month, the moon appears near Jupiter like this. But the moon is so much closer to us. It's about 247,000 miles from Earth on the 26th, but Jupiter is a whopping 478 million miles away.
The moon will continue on its orbit around the Earth and, on the night of the 27th, will be right below Regulus, our regal star.
We're facing west, and there is an even brighter planet. It looks like a star, but it is in fact Venus, the goddess of beauty herself.
Venus is even brighter than Jupiter because she's so much closer to us. She's still over 94 million miles away, but Jupiter is 5 times that distance.
We want you to keep an eye on the western sky every night for the next few months. Every time it's clear, face west after sunset and say hi to Venus.
Hi, Venus! And we're going to advance time day by day and see time fly. Venus will stay in about the same spot while the stars will get lower. The moon passes through twice and then a bright planet seems to approach.
That's Jupiter, and on the night of June 30th, Jupiter and Venus, the 2 brightest planets, will appear so close together that they may merge into one superplanet.
No way.
Yes way. So, look for Leo the Lion reclining like the Sphinx high in the southern sky.
Look for gigantic Jupiter to the right of Leo with the moon passing by on April 26th and 27th.
And start your Venus watch looking for her low in the west after sunset night after night as Jupiter and Leo catch her. It's all there when you
keep looking up.
Very warm water starting to work its way northward. Out across the northern Gulf there, temperatures continue to be anywhere from about 5 to 6 degrees Celsius, and with no major ice threats there. Out across areas north of St. Paul, the sea ice edge is about 10 to about 20 nautical miles just to the north and west. That continues to be fairly close, but due to the warmer weather just to the south, the ice is not expected to make any movements southward at this point. But we continue to watch it, and you can too at weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php. On to the marine weather now. You're looking at northerly flow coming in across the inner channels around 15 knots or so with 3-foot seas on the inside. Northwesterlies coming across the Clarence Strait. Across the coastline, 10 to 15 knots there with northwesterlies pulling the waves up to about 6 to 7 feet from Yakutat down to Sitka and down to Craig. Those are 7-foot seas there. For Saturday, look for that south and easterly flow to come up 30 knots with a 6-foot sea across the Clarence Strait. Northerlies coming down the Lynn Canal 20 knots with a 4-foot sea, and southeasterlies outside of Gustavus and Cross Sound and outside of Craig around 20 knots with 6-foot seas there. 15-knot winds there from Yakutat, looking at 5-foot seas as we head into Saturday. Across South Central, a variable flow outside of Prince William Sound and on the inside as well. 10-knot winds with a 2 to 5-foot sea. Northerlies coming down Cook Inlet, 10 to 15 knots, picking up to 20 knots. They're coming in from the east across the Barrens with a 5-foot sea. And Kodiak Island looking at 15-knot winds on either side. And Shelikof Strait, 3-foot seas. On the Gulf side, you're looking at 8-foot seas with that 15-knot wind from the south. For Saturday, northeasterly winds across Prince William Sound with a 10-knot flow, 10 to 15-knot winds coming down Cook Inlet. Around the Barrens, easterlies, 6-foot seas there with a 25-knot wind, and inside of Prince William Sound, a northeasterly wind at 10 knots. For the Alaska Peninsula, a south and easterly flow on the Bering Sea side, 15 to 20 knots with a 7 to 10-foot sea. South and southwesterly winds across the North Pacific at 9 to 11-foot seas expected there with winds from 15 to 25 knots. And by Saturday, we see that reversed course. More of a northerly flow is expected, 15 to 25 knots all areas with 4-foot seas inside of Bristol Bay and 8 to 9-foot seas across the North Pacific, 25-knot wind expected there. For the Aleutians, a northwesterly flow will be the predominant pattern we see, with 25-knot winds from the east, south of Unalaska and Nikolsky on an 11-foot sea. Otherwise, 25 to 35 knots everywhere else from the north and west. You're looking at from Kiska to Attu, more of a 16-foot sea there, 12 to 14-foot seas from Adak all the way out toward Nikolsky, and 9 to 15-foot seas coming up north of Adak and Atka as we head into Friday afternoon. As we get into Saturday, you'll notice some changes in the west. A west and southwesterly flow kicks in. That's down to 25 knots. Otherwise, northwesterly winds for the central and eastern chain, 30 to 35 knots, 13-foot seas on the Bering Sea coast. And for the Pacific coast, about 10 to 15 knots are expected, with some of the higher seas just west of Nikolsky and east of Atka. For the west coast, an easterly flow coming off of Amonuk across St. Lawrence Island. Northeasterlies south of Hooper Bay, still running over ice, and northerly winds around St. Matthew. 10 to 20 knots coming up around St. Paul and St. George, with an 8-foot sea developing there, and easterlies coming out of the Kuskokwim Bay with a 15-knot wind with a 5-foot sea. For Saturday, northerlies there across the same spot, 15 knots with a 4-foot sea. Northwesterlies continue for the Pribilofs on a 30-knot wind with a 10-foot sea. Westerlies kick in for the St. Matthew Island waters, and northeasterlies are still feeding into St. Lawrence around 15 knots there as we head into Saturday. For the North Slope, look for some of the stronger winds to be across the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. 20 to 25 knots expected there, with northeasterlies coming down the Chukchi Sea coast at 15 to 20 knots. Easterlies around Barrow at 15 knots. By Saturday, the winds come up a little bit more, 25 to 30 knots for the Beaufort Sea coast. Again, some gales around the region, and watch for some blowing snow along the coast. East to northeasterly winds north of Barrow and down the Chukchi Sea coast, and winds go fairly light outside of Kotzebue Sound, only down to 5 knots there for Saturday. Recapping tonight's weather, dry weather continues for southeast. Enjoyed that while it lasts. A weak ridge of high pressure is just strong enough to hold back the clouds across the eastern interior and around the Alcan border in the eastern Gulf. So a very pleasantly mild and quiet situation for you. Meanwhile, in the west, the southern Bering Sea, looking at a very widespread area of low pressure at 991 millibars, sloshing in snow and rain mixed with snow for the west and southwestern coastline. Periods of rainfall expected there for southwest, Kodiak Island to develop as we head into Friday. Some of that reaching up to Kenai Peninsula as we go into the afternoon. Blowing snow for the northeast coast, and for the northwest coast, periods of light snow there, including Kotzebue Sound. Southeast remains quiet. Look for some rain showers to head into southeast as we head into Saturday. A better chance for rainfall across the western and south central Gulf Coast, with rain and snow across southwest. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. Have a good night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.